friends. Hope you guys doing well? We're back to continue in letters 5 and 6 today of St.Theophan, the Recluse, the Spiritual Life. Again, if you desire to purchase this book, I'd ask that maybe you consider purchasing them from Holy Cross Monastery in Wayne, West Virginia, in their bookstore to help them out, but also the Convent of the Mother of God, Seeker of the Lost, here in Kansas City, and there is some contact information below. So let's continue our letters. And so letter 5 is regarded as the life of the body. How many questions you have come up with regarding my 2 previous letters. This shows you to be a lively, industrious, and receptive pupil and promises success. I shall write all the more willingly, but I will not answer everything for you right now. I shall leave the answers for the other times. I will occupy myself with what you are most occupied. You write, your words about the aspects, powers, and needs of human nature are bringing me into myself. I am turning inward. I see some of it. But the greater part of it is at times obscure, at other times completely invisible to me. I desire very much to know what the spiritual, mental, and physical aspects are in man, what the needs are for each, and how they are satisfied. I would very much like to keep myself on the level of human worth, of true human worth, such as is appointed to us by the Creator. Excellent! You are touching the very foundation of our life, the explanation of which will give us the foundations for future discussions. For how could it be otherwise for man to live, if not in the way in which he was made? Once we've established reasonable concepts about man's makeup, we will have the most reliable indication as to how he is to live. I think many people do not live as they should because they think that rules about the worthwhile life are outwardly imposed and not springing from man's very nature, are therefore not needed by them. If they were certain that there were such rules, they would not transgress them and fall away from them. And so listen, if you will. The body consists of various organs, each of which carries out its function, which is necessary for the body's life. There are 3 major systems. 1, the digestive, which includes the lungs, heart, arteries, and veins, lymphatic vessels, and multiplicity of other vessels, ducts and glands, which serve as various conduits for the blood and other bodily fluids. The function of all of these is the nourishment of the body. 2, the musculoskeletal system, the function of which is inner and outward movement. And 3, the nervous system, the center of which is the head and the spinal cord and the system of ganglia, which are located underneath the abdominal and chest cavity. While the radicals of the nerve pass through the entire body, the function of these is sensory. When the operation of these functions and their interrelationship is in order, the body is healthy and life is not endangered. But when this order is upset, the body becomes sick and life is endangered. Each function has its own particular need, which, making itself felt by the living creature, demands satisfaction. The needs in the digestion or alimentary and corporal part are food, drink, air, and sleep. The need of the musculoskeletal part is to tense the muscles, which need everyone feels after sitting for too long a period of time. Following directly upon this is a need for movement, which compels one to walk, stroll, or perform some sort of work. The need of the nervous part is the pleasant stimulation of the nerves of the entire body, such as the regulation of warmth and cold and the like, and especially the pleasant stimulations of the 5 senses, by which the nervous systems come into contact with the outside world. All this, as you see, has to do with the body. The soul would seem to have nothing to do with it, but because the soul, by virtue of having the closest contact with the body, has become entwined with it. Thereby, all the needs of the body are to be considered as its needs too. That is why we say, I want to eat, drink, sleep. I want to walk, stroll around, work. I want to see various colors, hear various things, smell various smells, and the like. Having assimilated to itself all the body's needs, the soul considers the satisfaction of these needs to be its business, and thus concerns itself with food, drink, sleep, clothing, shelter, and other like things, desiring in every way to make the body comfortable so that it will not bother it with its annoying needs. This relationship of the soul to the body, which is a one-sided relationship, comes from a certain inner compulsion, which is found in it as a sort of instinct. Creature love for the body, the desire to maintain the comfort of the body, and to obtain all that is needed for it. The sum total of all this comprises the physical aspects of human life. However, not everything here is equally physical or carnal or sensual. Only the digestive system is strongly carnal, but even it is ennobled by the adaptation of its satisfaction to strictly mental needs and purposes. The organs of movement and feeling serve mental needs more than bodily ones. One organ which stands apart from the system of the other organs, the organ of speech, is an organ exclusively of the soul, which alone it is intended to serve. What is undesirable about the physical, carnal, and sensual life, in the moral sense, is when a person who is extremely attracted to things of the belly and the body sets as his main goal the concerns for bodily comfort, or the complete gratification of physical needs only, forgetting about mental needs, and even more about spiritual needs. In this case, each physical need, simple in nature, branches out into a diversity of needs inculcated by habit, and an inclination for various means of gratification. Take food, drink, or clothing, for example. What could be more basic than these things? Meanwhile, how many needs are constant? Give it to me if it kills me. With this in mind, we see that we are not always free, because we are always chasing after needs to satisfy them. At the same time, dozens of other people are doing exactly the same thing. The minds and spirits of these people are inevitably famished, if not completely deadened, stopped up, and immersed in sensuality. Think over all this, if you will. As for the mind, that will be the next letter. Letter 6, the life of the soul, the intellectual aspect. You have previously gone inward. Let us enter within once again. See what a multiplicity and variety of action and motions there are. First one, then another enters and exits, takes root, then is rejected, does something, and does it again. This is because the soul is in continual motion and is unable to stand still for one thing. If we were to begin to look at the soul as a whole, we would not be able to make out anything, and so we must divide it into parts, and then examine each part individually. We have already long since looked over and divided all motions of the soul into 3 categories: thoughts, desires, and senses, each of which has received its name from a particular aspect of the soul: the intellectual, thinking, the desiring, and sensual. Using this division, we will begin looking at each aspect. The intellectual aspect. If there is confusion within us, it has its greatest scope within our thoughts. Our very desires and feelings are already stirred up under the action of the thoughts. In the category of thought, however, not everything is chaotic motion. In the midst of these thoughts are a number of substantial operations. It is precisely this that comprise actual mental life. From the standpoint of the thoughts, these operations are as follows. 1. As soon as you have observed something in me by means of your senses, or have heard others relate how they have observed something with their senses, at that instant the imagination is imagining, and the memory is remembering. Everything, nothing can enter the soul without the imagination and memory. Thus, subsequent mental activity rests upon the imagination and the memory. If something is not stored in the memory, you will not be able to imagine it, let alone think about it. It does happen that thoughts are sometimes born directly from the soul, but then they immediately assume a form. Thus, the entire intellectual aspect of the soul is imaginative. 2. The imagination and memory obtain and store only material for thoughts. The motion of thought itself comes out of the soul and operates according to the laws of the soul. Do you remember how your younger brother, once he had seen something new, would immediately ask you or someone else, "What is that? Who made that? What is it made of?" He would not come down until all these questions were answered to his satisfaction. The intellection of the soul begins specifically as a result of these questions, and it bears thoughts in answer to them, or it receives ready-made answers from others. The imagination and the memory do not think. They are the unskilled labor force, the backbone, the faculty of the soul from which arise such questions, and the thoughts that are sought and born in answer to them is called the intellect, whose business it is to reason, think things over, and reach the necessary conclusions. Observe yourself, and you will find that you cannot do anything without thinking it over. Every trifle must be deliberated. No matter how quickly this is accomplished, the understanding enters into everything and goes by the aforementioned questions. 3. While you are thinking something over, there is yet no clearly defined thought. The definite thought comes into being when you find an answer to one of the questions. Your intellect sorts through everything, seeking to find what kind of thing something is, where it comes from, what it is for, and the like. When you find an answer yourself, or you have heard it from someone else and agree with it, you usually say, "Now I understand. I do not need any further explanation. The matter is resolved." This answer quiets your intellection with respect to the subject you have been studying. Then your intellect turns to other subjects, while the thought which has just been formed is given over to the mental archive, the memory, from which, by the demand of necessity, it is pulled as an aid in the answering of other questions, and as a means for composing other thoughts. The sum total of concepts that have been formed in this way constitutes the image of your thoughts, which image you also detect whenever you are speaking. This is the realm of the knowledge you obtain through mental labor. The more problems you solve, the more definite thoughts or ideas about things you will have. The more such ideas you have, the broader the sphere of your knowledge. In this way, as you see, your intellect stands above the memory and imagination. This intellect, along with intellectual labor, obtains for you definite concepts or cognitions about things. You will not be able to obtain a definite answer to every question. The greater number of them will remain unanswered. People think and think, but they cannot come up with anything definite. That is why they say, maybe it is this way, maybe it is that way. This yields opinions and suppositions. In total, don't we have more of these than definite cognitions? When someone, in discussing a certain class of objects, obtains from himself and from others, through borrowing so many definite thoughts and concepts, and manages to add such good opinions and suppositions to the unresolved items, that it is possible to consider this realm of objects sufficiently well known and understood. Then all that has been obtained is put in order, is set out in the proper relation and sequence, and gives us a science of those subjects. Science is the crown of the intellectual labor of the intellect. I will explain all of this to you later in order to make clear to you of what the natural and proper operation of our intellectual faculty must consist. It would be proper to discuss diligently what is as yet unknown. In order to come to know it, very few people are capable of being scientists, and not everyone is able to study the sciences. But everyone is capable of and must discuss the things surrounding us in order to obtain definite concepts about them. That is a proper undertaking of the intellectual faculty in everyone. How much it will obtain depends upon its strengths, but it should always be occupied with the substantial business of thinking things over and the discussion of reality. Meanwhile, what do we see in our mental realm? The continual motion of images, the notions without any definite purpose or order. Thoughts arise, up one after the other. They form into a line, then they intersect each other, race a few steps forward, then go backwards, then run sideways, never stopping for anything. This is not reasoning. It is a wandering and scattering of thoughts. Therefore, this state is the complete opposite of what our intellectual faculty is supposed to be. That is its illness, which is so inculcated in it and so endemic to everyone that it would be impossible to find a single human being who is capable of continuously conducting the substantial labor of thinking, who is not subject to the scattering and wandering of various thoughts that divert him from his occupation and pull him in a different direction. Often we get lost in thought. What kind of state is this? Here is a description. A thought goes into the memory archive, and with the help of the imagination, it sorts through all the rubbish which has accumulated there, switching from one event to the other, and according to the laws of combining notions, it weaves something which has not been experienced together with something that has, and often weaves the impossible together with what has been experienced, doing this until the person comes to and returns to the surrounding reality. People say he is deep in thought. In reality, he is deep in emptiness, and his intellect is not involved in a substantial discussion of any matter. It is the very same thing as the dreams you have when you are sleeping, idle and empty thought. Observe yourself, and you will see that the greatest part of your time is spent on such empty and straying thoughts. Some days, and are there not more of these, not a single substantial thought enters the mind. I ask you to pay attention to this and spend some time solving this problem. Is it proper for a rational creature to act in this way. In the meantime, I shall turn to another sort of mental reality. But let's continue on to letter 7. The life of the soul, the desirous aspect. The aspect of desire. The faculty that operates here is the will, which wills desire to acquire, use or do what is beneficial to itself, or which is necessary or pleasant. In addition, it does not will or desire anything which is contrary or unpleasant. Disturbances of the will demand a corresponding act, because the will is in fact the active power, the essential need of which is to live and function. It maintains under its supervision all powers of the soul and body, and all functions which are at its disposal, all of which are put to use when needed. At its foundation lies zeal, or ardor, the thirst for something. The stimuli are the pleasant, beneficial, and necessary. When these are present, zeal sleeps, and the aspect powers lose their tension and fall away. They support desire, which desire kindles zeal. The mental aspect may be analyzed as follows. In the soul and body are needs, including such ordinary ones as family and social needs. These needs in and of themselves do not constitute any distinct desire, but merely form the pretext for seeking gratification for themselves. When a desire is satisfied in a particular way on a given occasion, then ever afterward, whatever this need is aroused, along with it is born the desire for that which has satisfied it previously. Desire always has a distinct object, a satisfied need. Another need has been satisfied in diverse ways. That is why, when it is aroused, a diversity of desires is born. First this, then that, then a third thing, capable of satisfying that need. When we analyze man's life, the needs behind the desires are not even apparent. Only the desires burrow into the soul and demand satisfaction, as if for their own sakes. What does the soul do about these desires? It is presented with a choice as to which object it will give preference from among all those which have been set before it. Along with this choice comes a decision, to make, to attain, or to use the chosen object. In accordance with this decision, means are selected, a method is defined, and a procedure for carrying out. After all this comes the act in its own good time and place. Everything, even the most trifling act, goes according to this procedure. You may check for yourself with your own routine. Sometimes all these operations are carried out instantaneously by habit, and the act follows immediately upon the desire. Choice, desire, and means are then undertaken from previous acts and do not demand a specially formulated basis. In a person who has lived for some time, almost everything is done by habit. Rarely does any new enterprise or undertaking occur which departs from this usual order of business and knowledge. So it is that the life which has been established demands acts corresponding to it. As these acts repeat themselves often, it is natural that they become habits, ways and rules of life and character. The way of life of a particular person is established from the sum total of all habits, rules, and procedures of this type, in such a manner that the way of his thinking and his outlook are made up in a sum total of pre-established notions. Knowing someone's way of life, it is possible to guess what he is thinking at any given moment, and how he will act in a given situation. The regulator of the active life is prudence, which is the same as reason, only it is at the service of the will. In the intellectual sphere, reason makes the decisions, when something is from existing knowledge, while in the desiring and active spheres, it determines how to do something in order to correctly attain what is rightly desired. When it learns to determine this properly, then a person always, or almost always, conducts his business successfully, and we rightfully ascribe prudence to him. It is the ability to conduct business successfully, correctly perceiving means with their purpose, and acts in their outer circumstances. From what you have been told, it will be difficult for you to draw conclusions concerning the natural and correct activity of the will, which, as you see, is the mistress of all our power in our life. Its occupation is to determine the way, method, and measure of satisfaction of the desires, which are borne by the needs, or which replace them, so that life may flow in a desirable manner, attaining peace and joy for the living being. We have, as was recollected, mental, physical, worldly, and social needs and desires. They do not manifest themselves in everyone in the same way, because not everyone's life takes shape in the same way. A person's occupation will be determined by how he is able to and must satisfy his particular needs and desires in the situations peculiar to him, and how he is able to and must apply the suitable methods and conduct his life according to the situation. The task of the desiring or active aspect of our life is to conduct that life sober-mindedly, in accordance with the established norm and all its affairs and undertakings. This would be proper, but try to understand and analyze what happens. In the mental aspects, we have confusion, scattering, and wandering of thoughts, while in the desiring aspect, we have inconsistency, disorder, and selfish desires, and we are preoccupied with them. How much time we spend in idleness and futility. We wander here and there, not knowing why we do such a thing. We do something and then we do it again, not knowing how to give a sensible account for our actions. We have one undertaking after another, and one occupation after another. But out of all of this only comes the crush of vanity. Desires are born. You cannot control them. Give me, they say. Sometimes they seem to be good, but at other times they are almost useless. How has this come to be? Our mistress, the will, has made her appearance. Look again, how many alien, troubling desires we have. Anger, hate, envy, stinginess, vanity, pride, and the like. The natural needs of the family and social life, which have been established, must be the source of such desires. But what is natural in these things? They only confuse what is natural and orderly in life. Where is this barbarous invasion from? I will leave this for you to ponder and hasten to conclude this letter. All right, well, another deep few letters. Hopefully gives you a source of contemplation and thought regarding your own life and habits and the way you think and decide. Anyways, we will talk to you on the next Orthodox Gardener.